What if the most catastrophic military defeat in British colonial history became one of the most cursed film productions of the 1970s? Fix bayonets! Zulu Dawn wasn't just a historical epic about the Battle of Isandlwana. It was a production nightmare that pushed cast and crew to their breaking point, a financial catastrophe that nearly destroyed careers, and a cinematic time capsule that documented the dying gasps of old Hollywood war spectacles. This is the story of how Zulu Dawn became one of the most troubled productions of its era, a tale of colonial guilt, logistical chaos, and the brutal reality of making epic cinema in the African sun. Here are 20 weird facts about Zulu Dawn that reveal the shocking truth behind the cameras. And stick around for the bonus fact that connects this film to one of Hollywood's most bizarre legends. Let's dive in. Fact number 1. It was a prequel. Nobody asked for 15 years too late. Zulu Dawn arrives in 1979 as a prequel to 1964 Zulu, but here's the problem. Nobody was clamoring for it. The original film, starring Michael Caine, had become a cult classic, but 15 years had passed. The audience had moved on. The world had changed. What worked in 1964 sweeping colonial war epics with clear heroes and villains felt increasingly uncomfortable by the late 1970s. Producer Cy Enfield, who directed the original Zulu, spent over a decade trying to get this prequel made. Studios kept rejecting it. The budget kept inflating. The script kept being rewritten. By the time cameras rolled, the project carried the weight of impossible expectations and a cultural moment that had already passed. It wasn't just a film, it was a relic being born into the wrong era. Fact number 2. They cast Burt Lancaster when he could barely walk. Burt Lancaster takes the role of Colonel Durnford at age 65, and he's falling apart. Literally, his knees are destroyed from decades of doing his own stunts. He needs a cane between takes. The South African heat is crushing him. Production notes reveal that Lancaster struggles to mount horses, has difficulty with extended standing scenes, and requires constant medical attention. But here's what makes it brilliant. His physical limitations actually enhance the performance. Durnford's weariness, his slow movements, his sense of a man being ground down by impossible circumstances, it's all real. Lancaster isn't acting exhausted. He is exhausted. The cameras capture genuine suffering, and it translates into one of his most understated, powerful performances. Sometimes the best acting happens when actors stop pretending. Fact number 3. 2000. Real Zulu warriors were paid almost nothing. The production hires over 2,000 Zulu extras to recreate the massive impi formations that overwhelmed British forces at Isandlwana. These aren't actors. They're real Zulu men from local communities, many of them direct descendants of warriors who fought in the actual 1879 battle. They train for weeks in traditional fighting techniques. They perform complex military maneuvers in scorching heat. They spend months away from their families. Their payment? Approximately $2 per day. Compare this to what the white British and American actors receive thousands per week, and the uncomfortable colonial dynamics of the film extend behind the camera. The production essentially recreates the very power structures it's depicting on screen. Chief Mangosuthu Buthelezi, who plays King Cetshwayo, later speaks about the economic exploitation, though he defends the cultural importance of Zulu participation in telling their own story. Fact number 4. Director Douglas Hickox was the second choice, and he knew it. Cy Enfield was supposed to direct his own prequel. He'd spent 15 years developing it, writing it, fighting for it. Then his health collapsed. At 65, with heart problems and failing eyesight, Enfield couldn't handle the physical demands of a massive location shoot in South Africa. The producers brought in Douglas Hickox, a competent journeyman director known for British television work. Hickox walks into a production where everyone cast, crew, producers wishes someone else was there. Enfield remains on set as a producer, constantly second-guessing decisions. The crew shows visible loyalty to Enfield, not Hickox. The director essentially becomes a technician executing someone else's vision with no creative authority and diminishing respect. His direction is technically proficient but emotionally distant. You can feel the absence of passion in every frame. Fact number 5. They filmed at the actual battlefield, and it was haunted. The production shoots at the real Isandlwana battlefield in South Africa, where 1,300 British soldiers and colonial forces were killed in 1879. Local Zulu people warned the crew about disturbing the site. They speak of restless spirits, of blood that soaked so deeply into the earth it can never be washed away, of nights when you can hear the sounds of battle echoing across the hills. Crew members report inexplicable occurrences, equipment malfunctions without explanation, cameras jammed during crucial battle sequences. Sound equipment picks up strange noises that technicians can't identify. Several crew members refuse to work at the site after dark. Whether you believe in such things or not, the psychological weight of filming where thousands died violently affects everyone. The location itself becomes a character in the production present, oppressive, unforgettable. Fact number 6. Peter O'Toole was completely sober and miserable. Peter O'Toole arrives in South Africa attempting sobriety for the first time in decades. The legendary heavy drinker, famous for consuming epic quantities during shoots, is trying to prove he can work clean. It's torture. O'Toole is irritable, anxious, suffering through withdrawal symptoms while performing in brutal heat. His performance as Lord Chelmsford shows it. There's a brittleness to O'Toole here, a barely contained fury that reads as perfect characterization for the arrogant British commander. But it's not just acting. O'Toole is genuinely angry at himself, at the production, at the choice to stay sober. He clashes with other actors. He rewrites his dialogue constantly. He demands multiple takes for reasons no one understands. The performance works, but the cost is visible in his eyes. Sobriety, for O'Toole, proves more challenging than any role. Fact number 7. The horses kept dying from the heat. South African summer heat peaks above 100 degrees Fahrenheit during filming. The production brings in dozens of horses for the British cavalry scenes, and they start collapsing. 3 horses actually die from heat exhaustion during the shoot. Animal welfare protocols in 1978 are nothing like today's standards. Horses are pushed too hard, given insufficient water breaks, made to run in full period tack under punishing sun. The production keeps filming. When a horse goes down, they bring in another. The scenes require dozens of mounted soldiers charging across the veldt, and the schedule won't accommodate equine health concerns. Modern audiences watching the cavalry charges are seeing animals in genuine distress. Several shots show horses visibly struggling, their sides heaving, foam coating their mouths. It's a dark reminder of how filmmaking once treated animals as disposable props. Fact number 8. Real spears were used and people got stabbed. The Zulu extras train with traditional assegai spears, and production decides to use real weapons for authenticity. Not dulled props, not rubber replicas. Actual metal-tipped spears used in traditional Zulu ceremonies and demonstrations. During the massive battle sequences, with thousands of warriors charging and hundreds of soldiers firing blanks, control becomes impossible. At least 6 crew members and extras receive puncture wounds during filming. One British extra playing a soldier takes a spear tip in the thigh, not deep, but enough to require medical treatment and stitches. The Zulu warriors are skilled, but accidents happen when you're choreographing chaos with lethal weapons. Insurance costs skyrocket. Safety meetings become daily occurrences, but the spears stay real because the footage is undeniably powerful. You can see the weight, the danger, the authenticity. Blood gets drawn for cinema. Fact number 9. The budget exploded from $5 million to $12 million. Initial budget projections land around $5 million, already substantial for 1978. By the time production wraps, they've spent nearly $12 million. What happened? Everything that could go wrong did. Weather delays cost weeks. Animal problems require replacements. The massive cast of Zulu extras needs feeding, housing, and transportation. Period uniforms prove more expensive than estimated. And South Africa, despite being cheaper than American or European locations, still devours money at an alarming rate. Producers watch dailies, calculating their financial doom. American International Pictures, the distributor, starts having panic attacks. The math becomes brutal. Even if the film succeeds, breaking even is nearly impossible. And this isn't 1964, when audiences packed theaters for historical epics. By 1979, Star Wars and Alien dominate. War films feel old-fashioned. The budget explosion essentially guarantees financial failure before the film even reaches theaters. Fact number 10. The battle choreography took 4 months to plan. Recreating the Battle of Isandlwana requires choreographing movements for over 2,000 people across massive terrain. Military historians work with the production for 4 months before filming, mapping out historically accurate troop movements, formations, and tactics. They study Zulu military strategy, the Horns of the Buffalo formation that encircled and destroyed British forces. They research British colonial military doctrine with its rigid linear formations and disastrous underestimation of African military capability. The result is probably the most historically accurate battle sequence ever filmed about this conflict. Compared to most Hollywood war films that prioritize drama over authenticity, Zulu Dawn actually shows how the battle unfolded. The Zulu strategic brilliance, the British tactical incompetence, the chaos when disciplined volleys fail against overwhelming numbers. It's a masterclass in historical recreation that almost nobody saw, because let's be honest, go ahead and like and subscribe, because we're about to reveal even more insane details that prove Zulu Dawn deserved better than the financial catastrophe it became. Fact number 11. Denholm Elliott refused to leave his tent. British character actor Denholm Elliott, playing a supply officer, develops severe anxiety during the South African shoot. The isolation, the heat, the cultural tensions, everything combines to trigger what would now be recognized as a panic disorder. Elliott starts refusing to leave his tent except for actual filming. He takes his meals alone. He won't socialize with cast or crew. Production assistants have to physically escort him to set each day, sometimes waiting hours while he works up the courage to emerge. His scenes are filmed quickly, efficiently, with minimal takes, because everyone knows Elliott is barely holding together. Watch his performance. There's a genuine fear in his eyes that works perfectly for a British officer realizing he's in a situation beyond his control. Method acting through mental health crisis. Elliott later describes the Zulu Dawn shoot as one of the worst experiences of his career. Fact number 12. They built an entire British camp, then destroyed it. The production constructs a massive recreation of the British military camp at Isandlwana, over 100 tents, supply wagons, artillery pieces, field hospitals, everything needed to house 1,800 soldiers. The attention to historical detail is obsessive. They import period-accurate canvas. They replicate Victorian military supply chains. They even recreate the specific layout documented in historical records. Then they destroy it all in a single day of filming. The Zulu attack sequence requires setting fires, collapsing tents, scattering props across acres of terrain. Months of construction work obliterated in hours. And here's the killer. They can only shoot it once. No second takes. No safety net. The cameras roll, the pyrotechnics fire, and everyone prays they captured it properly. The destruction footage makes the final cut, representing millions of dollars of production value going up in smoke, literally and figuratively. Fact number 13. John Mills played his historical character's actual grandson. In a bizarre genealogical twist, actor John Mills, playing a British officer, discovers during production that his character is the actual historical grandson of another officer he's playing. Colonial military history is so densely interconnected that family names repeat across generations, with sons and grandsons serving in the same regiments, fighting the same colonial wars. Mills finds this deeply unsettling. He's essentially portraying his character's descendant, playing out family history that led real people to real deaths on this exact ground. It adds a layer of uncanny connection to the role. Mills can't shake the feeling that he's somehow channeling ancestral memory, performing events that shaped his character's actual family legacy. The line between historical recreation and personal history blurs uncomfortably. Fact number 14. The Zulu language dialogue is completely authentic. Unlike most Hollywood films that fake African languages or use gibberish, Zulu Dawn employs actual Zulu speakers to write authentic dialogue. Chief Mangosuthu Buthelezi, a real Zulu leader, not only acts but serves as cultural consultant. Every word spoken in Zulu is grammatically correct, historically appropriate, and culturally meaningful. For Zulu-speaking audiences, this is revolutionary. They're watching a Hollywood film that actually respects their language, that doesn't reduce it to exotic sounds or primitive grunts. The Zulu characters speak with intelligence, strategy, and humanity. King Cetshwayo's speeches contain actual historical rhetoric. The warriors' battle calls use real military terminology. It's a level of linguistic respect almost unheard of in 1970s cinema, especially in films about colonial conflicts. The authenticity makes the film play completely differently for African audiences versus Western ones. Fact number 15. Simon Ward suffered a nervous breakdown mid-production. British actor Simon Ward, playing a young lieutenant, collapses mentally halfway through filming. The combination of physical exhaustion, isolation from family, and the psychological weight of the material breaks him. Ward starts missing call times. He's found crying in his trailer. He becomes convinced he's going to die in South Africa, that the production is cursed. Production shuts down for 3 days while Ward receives medical and psychological treatment. His remaining scenes are carefully managed, filmed quickly with maximum support. Watch his later scenes in the film. There is a hollow quality to his eyes, a man operating on autopilot. Ward later admits he should have left the production, but felt contractually and professionally trapped. The experience damages his mental health for years afterward. Not every war casualty happens on screen. Fact number 16. The film's anti-colonial message was too subtle for 1979 audiences. Zulu Dawn attempts something genuinely subversive, depicting British colonial forces as arrogant, incompetent, and morally wrong, while showing the Zulu as sophisticated military strategists defending their homeland. But the film's nuance gets lost. 1979 audiences, especially American audiences, don't catch the critique. They see another war movie with white heroes and African villains. The film's sympathies lie clearly with the Zulu, but the marketing and the period film aesthetic obscure this. Critics miss it. Audiences miss it. Only decades later, with changing perspectives on colonial history, does the film's actual message become clear. It's a tragedy of timing and execution. The filmmakers tried to deconstruct colonial mythology using the very language of colonial cinema, and the contradiction proved too complex for contemporary viewers. The film becomes a victim of its own ambition. Fact number 17. Christopher Cazenove discovered his character's real letters. Actor Christopher Cazenove, preparing for his role as a British officer, travels to London archives and discovers his character's actual letters home to his family. Real correspondence written weeks before the battle, describing life in South Africa, expressing doubts about the military campaign, mentioning fears about Zulu military strength that his superiors ignored. Reading these letters transforms Cazenove's performance. He's no longer playing a generic Victorian officer. He's channeling a real person with real thoughts, fears, and premonitions of doom. Cazenove incorporates phrases from the letters into his dialogue. He mimics the man's reported mannerisms. He even adopts the historical figure's reported habit of touching his mustache when anxious. The result is a performance of eerie specificity, a ghost channeled through archival research and method commitment. Fact number 18. The production accidentally discovered battlefield artifacts. During location filming at Isandlwana, crew members keep finding things in the dirt. Uniform buttons, bullet casings, bone fragments. The battlefield had never been fully excavated or cleaned. 100 years later, evidence of the massacre still lies scattered across the veldt. Production halts several times while archaeologists are called in to document findings. The discoveries are treated with proper historical respect, catalogued, and eventually donated to South African museums. But the experience unnerves everyone. They're making a movie about a battle while literally standing on the bones of men who died there. The past isn't distant history. It's right beneath their feet. Some crew members start refusing to sit on the ground during breaks, disturbed by the thought of what they might be sitting on. Fact number 19. The film premiered to empty theaters. After all the suffering, expense, and effort, Zulu Dawn opens in the United States in May 1979 to catastrophic box office. The film earns less than $1 million domestically against its $12 million budget. Theaters play it for a week and then pull it. Reviews are mixed at best. American International Pictures faces financial crisis partly because of this failure. The cast and crew watch their massive effort vanish without trace. All those months in South Africa, all that historical research, all those authentic battle sequences, gone. The film becomes a cautionary tale about the death of the historical epic genre, about budgets spiraling out of control, about making films for an audience that no longer exists. It's a professional catastrophe that damages careers and bankrupts companies. Cinema history is littered with these corpses, great efforts that arrive at exactly the wrong moment. Fact number 20. It accidentally predicted South African political change. Zulu Dawn depicts African military resistance to white colonial power, showing indigenous forces defeating supposedly superior European armies. In 1979, this seems like historical curiosity, but within 15 years, apartheid South Africa will collapse, replaced by majority rule. The film's central message that African self-determination will inevitably overcome colonial oppression proves prophetically accurate. Modern South African audiences have rediscovered the film as a historical document of both 1879 and 1979, a snapshot of changing consciousness about colonialism, race, and power. What seemed like a commercial failure becomes a cultural artifact, a bridge between the colonial past and post-colonial future. The film's very existence employing thousands of Zulu people, giving them voice and agency in telling their own history, represents a small crack in the apartheid system. Sometimes cultural impact takes decades to become visible. Bonus fact: the film's historical advisor was a spy. The production's chief military historian, brought in to ensure tactical authenticity, was simultaneously working for South African intelligence services. His real job was monitoring the massive gathering of Zulu people, watching for signs of political organizing or resistance activity under the cover of film production. This wasn't discovered until decades later, when apartheid-era intelligence files were declassified. The historian filed regular reports on the Zulu extras, on Chief Buthelezzi's activities, on any conversations that might indicate political consciousness. The film production became an unwitting intelligence operation. Every authentic detail, every carefully researched historical accuracy was simultaneously feeding into apartheid surveillance systems. The uncomfortable truth: the film's celebration of Zulu military prowess was enabled by contemporary oppression of Zulu political rights. Zulu Dawn remains one of cinema's most beautifully tragic what-ifs. A film that tried to do everything right: historical accuracy, cultural respect, anti-colonial perspective, and still failed commercially. But failure has strange afterlives. Today, the film stands as a testament to the hubris of epic filmmaking, the dying gasps of old Hollywood's historical spectacles, and the complex relationship between art, history, and politics. Those sweeping shots of Zulu warriors cresting the hills, the meticulous recreation of Victorian military incompetence, the brutal honesty about colonial violence, they all still work. The film endures not despite its troubled production, but because of it. You can feel the struggle in every frame. If you enjoyed discovering these behind-the-scenes secrets, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. Drop a comment telling us which historical battle you'd like us to cover next. Because sometimes the real story is what happens when the cameras stop rolling, and sometimes that story is even more dramatic than what makes it to the screen.